So, hello, we're back. This is now third day. We're recording this. Take a minute to remember. It's only going to get harder from here, right? So today we'll go over the questions for day 4, 5, and 6, and we'll go over the answers for day 2. Right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes. When you pin the shouldn't you pin? What are you doing?
Oh no, I got it on the gallery view, so we should all be visible. The recording.
How is the microphone? Alexi seems really quiet right now.
I didn't talk much though.
Okay.
He's just mumbling at me.
Oh.
I'll move the microphone a little closer to you though.
Okay.
So yeah, I think in general, how are things going with you guys in terms of the puzzle? I think Alexei mentioned one thing while we were over getting food.
The day 3, the day 1 and 2 was totally fine. The day 3, for some reason, the difficulties skyrocketed.
For me, that's when it started to get fun though. Like
I don't know, yeah, it's totally fun, but I was
the
like,
fun part about Advent of Code is not doing a 5-minute puzzle. It's doing a puzzle that takes a long time, and you have to actually put a lot of thought into.
yeah,
But
no,
you feel better when you finish it.
I didn't have much time ahead, and I was like, okay, this day 3, I think it's gonna be enough what I have. And there's like, wow, actually I'm running out of time. So at the end, I was like, wow, let's go. And day 4 actually was totally fine. It was even easier for me. And day 5, I didn't finish yet.
Day 3 was the binary one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
binary.
That one was tricky.
Yeah, the day 3, yes.
Yeah.
For me, it started on day 4. Day 3 was fine, but day 4 was not that easy, especially the differentiating the inputs in the bingo puzzle numbers and the real boards.
Oh, yeah, formatting the input is always hard.
Yeah,
It's
formatting that took me a while. And
Yeah.
also I made the one small syntax error in Python, and that took me more than I expected, because the logic was right, and it had to be working, you know. In the sample input, I got the right answer, but on the real input,
missing.
it was giving me the error, but logic was correct. So after debugging it for 15 minutes, I found out it was a syntax error. It had to be a little bit inside the if loop, but it is outside, so.
Yeah, I think I spent about a good hour, because I'm trying to fill up my old 2015 admin code as well.
Oh.
Spent about a good hour until I finally realized I had put the wrong index number for an array that I had.
Oh, that drives a little crazy when you realize it's a really small bug.
Right? Just one character, a number, just one off. Oh man.
Day 4 was the bingo one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Well, let's get into it. Let's
Okay,
start,
let's go.
because that's one of the questions that we got to cover anyway. So let's start with day 4. Let's see. Oh, I got to share my screen, and then we'll get into the details of it itself. Do that one, I believe. Give me 1 second, let me double check. That's okay.
Advent of Code.
Yeah, day 6 just launched. It's now 15 minutes since 2 o'clock. So, but we'll get into that a little shortly. I'm sure Scott has already started on it.
Finished it.
Scott's already finished it.
Didn't even have time to see it. Actually, I skimmed it.
Giants. Okay, so day 4. Since Farouk, you already started talking a little bit about it. Do you want to go ahead and read day 4?
Yeah, sure. So you are already almost 1.5 kilometers, almost a mile below the surface of the ocean, already so deep that you cannot see any sunlight. What you can see, however, is a giant squid that has attached itself to the outside of your submarine. Maybe it wants to play bingo. Bingo is played on a set of boards, each consisting of a 5 to 5 grid of numbers. Numbers are chosen at random, and the chosen number is marked on all boards on which it appears. Numbers may not appear on all boards. If all numbers in any row or any column of a board are marked, that board wins. Diagonals do not count. I think this game bingo is named Sudoku on some languages. Are they similar or
Very different, actually.
Yeah.
very
Well,
different?
it's similar that it deals with numbers on a grid, but I think the rules are different enough.
Yeah.
This one, there's no math in real bingo. In regular bingo, there's no math.
Okay.
It's just
So
someone
the
calls a
submarine-
number, and then you say, "Oh, I have that number."
Yeah, Sudoku is usually a 9x9 grid too.
I think you can select the grids, but I played it when I was 7 or 8 years old, so it reminded me Sudoku.
In bingo, if you'd like, I can explain bingo a little bit. In bingo, we'd usually play it in classrooms as kids, or actually older people enjoy playing bingo at like bingo centers in America. Usually like grandmas and grandpas will go to the bingo hall and play bingo together. And when you get to bingo, everybody gets one board. You get a paper board that has like a 5x5
Number
grid
of
numbers
boards.
on it. And then there's a person at the front of the room who will spin a like metal cage full of balls that have all of the numbers possible in there. They'll spin it and then they'll pull out a ball. And then they'll call out that number, and everyone who has that number will mark that number on their bingo board.
Okay.
And when the first person gets a full row of numbers all crossed out, then they win.
Yeah, but there's, the difference between, I think, doing it on this computer and doing this in real life is, part of the thing in real life is, one, you got to pay attention, because if you space out and you miss a number, it's on you.
Yeah.
Second thing is, it's the first person who yells bingo is the one that gets the board checked.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of gamemanship to it. But I want to go back to, Farouk, did you just say that you play Sudoku as a 7 or 8 year old?
On a phone, yeah, on a.
Wow.
6 years old.
I think I didn't find it until I was in my 30s, and I still found it difficult.
No, because it was I had a Nokia phone, like black and white, so it didn't have many games. It only had Sudoku and Snake games. So
I never even heard the word Sudoku until I was like 16.
So okay, I'll go on with the story then. The
All right.
submarine has a bingo subsystem to help passengers. Currently, you and the giant squid pass the time. It automatically generates a random order to which the draw numbers in the random set of boards, your puzzle input. For example, we first get the numbers which will be played, 7, 4, 9, 5, 11, 17, so on, and a certain number of boards on a 5 to 5 grid. Okay, after the first 5 numbers are drawn, 7, 4, 9, 5, and 11, there are no winners, but the boards are marked as follows. Shown here, Jason, to save space. So after first 5 numbers are drawn, some numbers are marked bold because these numbers have been played, but we do not have any row or column which has the all numbers marked bold. So after the next 6 numbers are drawn, 17, 23, 2, 0, 14, and 21, there are still no winners, but we have more numbers marked bold, and the third board, first column, first row is really close to winning because it has 4 numbers marked bold and it has only 24 missing. So finally 24 is drawn and we have a winner. The first row on the third board has all numbers marked bold, and this board wins now because it has a row with all the numbers in a row marked bold. So at this point, the third board wins because it has at least one complete row or column of marked numbers. In this case, the entire top row is marked 14, 21, 17, 24, and 4. Now you have to complete the score of that board to submit it as a solution to the problem. The score of the winning board can now be calculated. start by finding the sum of all unmarked numbers on that board. In this case, the sum is 188. Then multiply that sum by the number that was just called when the board won 24 to get the final score. So we have to multiply this sum of all unmarked numbers by the number which was called last in the board won, giving us a final output of 4,512. So when we are playing against a squid, we have to find which board will win first and get the sum of all unmarked numbers, multiply by the number which was just called to get our sample input to as a submission. To guarantee victory against this giant squid, figure out which board will win first. What will your final score be if you choose that board? Yeah, so we'll be given a lot more boards than those 3 as our input. And we have to start by playing each number and see which rows or columns are being marked bold in each board and find which one will have a row or column with all the numbers marked bold first.
Yeah.
All right, this seems quite a bit harder than day 1 and day 2 to me. And it seems like there's
for
many
me
different
too.
ways that you can do it, depending on how you format your input. If you want to use objects or if you want to use arrays, either way, you're going to have to do a little bit of work just to get the input into a usable format that you can search through.
I think this one might be one where the people doing this pen and paper might have an advantage. If they just print it out.
Well, it depends on the size of the input, I think.
Like drew circles around like however many boards, because there's quite a few boards, but there's not like an infinite number of boards, right?
For me, I got 100 inputs.
100 boards.
Yeah.
So it's
So just
doable.
print them all out and get 99 of your best friends and play bingo.
And at least for me, it probably took as long for them to do it by hand than it took for me to do it with code. So I'm gonna put that out there.
For me, actually, I made a mistake the first time I did it because I did not read carefully, which is crucial to these puzzles. I totally skipped the line where it says diagonals do not count because I saw bingo and my brain immediately went to, okay, bingo, down, 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 across, and diagonals. So I thought, oh, okay, there's 12 possible ways to win. And I coded that and I did not get the correct answer.
Only once? You did not get the correct answer
And
only
then
once?
I'm like, well, why is my answer not correct? So I read carefully and I saw diagonals do not count. Oh, okay, that's why. And then I got the wrong answer again. And then I've had to fix my code.
I had like 6 submissions which were wrong, I think. Yeah.
It happens.
Because my logic was right. So it was driving me crazy. Like, is it wrong? The checking?
Were you getting the correct answer for the sample input?
Yes, because the sample input, the correct answer is on the row, right?
That's
But
right.
on my puzzle input, the correct answer was on a column. So
Oh.
my column part was not spaced correctly.
I think the sample input on this one wasn't as useful because it only had 3 boards for the sample.
Well, you know, I ended up using the sample input and then adding a couple boards of my own with other combinations of winnings that would guarantee to win before this third one. So I mean, that's something that you can do as
Great
well.
idea.
In addition to doing, when you're creating these sample things, I mean, you can add your own boards and whatnot to test. And actually, one of the things I tested was the columns to make sure that the columns were picked up as well.
Farouk, you said you submitted 6 times. How long have you been blocked?
5 minutes. I went to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's different now. It doesn't increase one by one because I got blocked 1 minute like 4 times.
Okay.
So after that it went to 5 minutes and then I got the right answer.
Interesting.
After it forced you to actually stop and really think about your answer.
Yeah. But I got to accept it was kind of enjoyable. I liked the process. I visualizing the entire boards, which ones are getting marked as bold and stuff.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
This one was a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed this a
Right.
lot more than day 1, 2, and 3 because it seemed something more practical, more realistic.
Yeah.
It's like a Squid Game.
It's literally just a game. All right.
Should we move on to day 5?
Yeah, let's go on day 5. And back. Day 5. I'll go over this one. You come across a field. Oh, this sounds familiar because I did it.
You did it.
It's like, didn't we do this on day 1? But the day 1 was like plumes, right?
Yeah, you do so.
Like
so
columns and rows of plumes of some sort of geothermal vent, but there's like hydrothermal or whatever. You come across a field of hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. These vents constantly produce large opaque clouds, so it would be best to avoid them if possible. They tend to form in lines. The submarine helpfully produces a list of nearby lines of vents, which is your puzzler, but for you to review. For example, and there's a list of coordinates. 09 to 59, 80 to 08, 94 to 34, and so on. And I believe there is 10 of them. There are 10 examples of lines. Each line of vents is given as a line segment in the format of x1, y1, 2, or arrow over to x2, y2, where x1, y1 are the coordinates of one end of the line segment, and x2, y2 are the coordinates of the other end. These line segments include the points at both ends. In other words, an entry like 11 to 13 covers the points 11, 12, and 13. An entry like 97 to 77 covers the points 97, 87, and 77. For now, only consider horizontal and vertical lines, lines where either x equals 1, or x1 equals x2, or y1 equals y2. So the horizontal and vertical lines from the above list would produce the following diagram. And here we see a diagram of a lot of periods, a couple 1s, and a couple 2s. In this diagram, the top left corner is 0, 0, and the bottom right corner is 9, 9. Each position is shown as the number of lines which cover that point or period, if no line covers that point. The top left pair of 1s, for example, comes from 2, 2 to 2, 1. The very bottom row is formed by overlapping lines 0, 9 to 5, 9. And 0, 9 to 2, 9. To avoid the most dangerous areas, you need to determine the number of points where at least 2 lines overlap. In the above example, this is anywhere in the diagram with a 2 or larger. And there's a total of 5 of these points. Consider only horizontal and vertical lines. At how many points do at least 2 lines overlap? And so, yeah, I mean, the diagram is certainly one way you can do it. You don't have to use a diagram, but you know, that certainly visually at least gives you good confirmation that your algorithm is working the way it should. But you have on there horizontal and vertical lines, and anywhere where 2 lines intersect or 2 lines overlap rather, you have increasing numbers. Yeah. In this case, there's only, looks like the most any lines overlap is 2 times, or any points
Sample at least.
2 lines is 2 times. So there's 5 points that have a 2 in them.
Yeah. Well, even if there were 3, if there was a 2 or a 3 or a 4, it doesn't matter because you're only counting the number of ones that are bigger than 1.
Correct.
So it wouldn't matter if they overlapped multiple times. You'd still only count it as 1 point.
Right.
I think there's a big hint in this one for part 2 also. If you look at the very top of the screen you're sharing right now, it says, for now, only consider horizontal and vertical lines.
Yeah.
Gigantic hint for what part 2 is going to include. I think part 2 will probably include the diagonal lines as well. That's a giant hint right there where it says for now. So I think that's nice. It's rare that we have hints about what part 2 is going to be.
Did you do diagonals on your first puzzle on this one as well?
I did not. I read this line carefully.
Learn from the day 4.
Only on day 4 did I make that mistake. But actually, I got very lucky on day 4. The way that I did my code, the way that I solved the solution for part 1, I only had to modify 2 lines in order to get the answer for part 2. It was very easy. I got part 2 about 12 seconds after I got part 1.
Day 4?
For day 4, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this one, I think it's nice that it gives you a clue for part 2. It seems like part 1's definitely going to be easier and part 2 will be a little bit harder, but you get an idea of what you expect.
Yeah.
They might throw a curveball, you don't know.
I think in every year, Advent Code has had at least a couple puzzles that deal with a 2-dimensional plane.
Yeah, I remember something similar to this last year. This one's different though. It's a little bit interesting. So I think one of the things that you need to remember when doing this puzzle is you need to remember your X and Y coordinates. So when I did this, is it okay to say how I solved it a little bit?
Let's talk about that when we go over
Okay.
answers. Let's jump in the gun here.
No hints right now.
Any other questions on 5 and we'll go on to 6?
Okay.
Okay. No, I think this covers it pretty well.
Okay.
All right, let's go on to 6.
6. I haven't even read it yet.
Me too.
Well, now you get to. So
Okay.
Wow, it's long.
The
Okay.
people that were the same for me. I was like, oh, Mama is getting too long. This stuff. Like, oh, it's doable. It's doable.
Shall I read this one?
Yep, go ahead, Scott.
All right, day 6, lanternfish. The sea floor is getting steeper. Maybe the sleigh keys got carried this way. A massive school of glowing lanternfish swims past. They must spawn quickly to reach such large numbers, maybe exponentially quickly. You should model their growth rate to be sure. Although you know nothing about this specific species of lanternfish, you make some guesses about their attributes. Surely, each lanternfish creates a new lanternfish once every 7 days. Wow, how would you even guess that?
Surely.
They just must.
Yeah.
It's a fish.
Everybody
They
knows
must have baby fish every 7 days. Okay, I love the assumption right there, but let's continue.
Yeah.
However,
Complete distraction from trying to find keys, but yeah.
yeah. However, this process isn't necessarily synchronized between every lanternfish. One lanternfish might have 2 days left until it creates another lanternfish, while another might have 4. So you can model each fish as a single number that represents the number of days until it creates a new lanternfish. Okay, so it looks like each fish is going to be its own like countdown timer. All right, let's keep going. Furthermore, you reason a new lanternfish would surely need slightly longer before it's capable of producing more lanternfish. 2 more days for its first cycle. All right, so baby lanternfish have to wait a little longer to have their first kid.
Are they like asexually, like just cloning?
I think they are. I think they're just splitting apart. Let's see. So suppose you have a lanternfish with an internal timer value of 3. After 1 day, its internal timer would become 2. After another day, its internal timer would become 1. After another day, its internal timer would become 0. Okay, so its timer can go all the way down to 0. That's interesting. And then after another day, its internal timer would reset to 6, and it would create a new lanternfish with an internal timer of 8. Okay. So I think that step there is really important. I'm going to read that one more time. After another day, its internal timer would reset to 6, and it would create a new lanternfish with an internal timer of 8. Okay, so it looks like adult lanternfish, after they have a baby, their timer goes to 6. But baby lanternfish start at 8. Is that correct?
2 more.
Or
Yeah,
it's
2 more days.
They have 2 more days.
only for the first cycle, right? Because of
Only the first cycle, that's
4
right.
days for its first cycle.
Okay. After another day, the first lanternfish would have an internal timer of 5, and the second lanternfish would have an internal timer of 7. A lanternfish that creates a new fish resets its timer to 6, not 7, because 0 is included as a valid timer value. Yeah, that's right. On line 3 there, it showed that the fish's timer got to 0, but they didn't have a baby on that day. They'd have a baby the next day after 0.
Yeah, they're 0 indexed, just like.
Yeah, makes sense to me. The new lanternfish starts with an internal timer of 8 and does not start counting down until the next day. Okay, that's important too. The first day that a new fish is born, they don't count down at all. They're born at 8, and the next day they will count down to 7. Okay. Realizing what you're trying to do, the submarine automatically produces a list of the ages of several hundred nearby lanternfish. Of course it does. Your puzzle input. For example, suppose you were given the following list: 3, 4, 3, 1, 2. That seems like a really short sample input. Let's see. This list means that the first fish has an internal timer of 3. The second fish has an internal timer of 4, and so on until the fifth fish, which has an internal timer of 2. Simulating these fish over several days would proceed as follows. What? Initial state, 3, 4, 3, 1, 2. After 1 day, 2, 3, 2, 0, 1. After 2 days, 1, 2, 1, 6, 0, 8. Oh, so I see that fourth fish there, the one that was a 0 after 1 day, has now had a baby. So
Yeah.
he goes back to 6, and his baby starts at number 8, right?
Yeah.
After 3 days, 0, 1, 0, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so another fish now has had a baby. Wow. And I'm not going to read all of this. You can look through it yourself, but it keeps going until after 18 days, we have a lot of fish. Well, each day, a 0 becomes a 6 and adds a new 8 to the end of the list, while each other number decreases by 1 if it was present at the start of the day. In this example, after 18 days, there are a total of 26 fish. After 80 days, there would be a total of 5,934 fish. Find a way to simulate lanternfish. How many lanternfish would there be after 80 days? Okay, so we need to find the number after 80 days. But in our sample input here, they only show us until 18 days. But we can assume that it's just going to keep growing. There's going to be more and more fish until 80 days. We have to see how many there are. I guess we're going to be in the submarine a long time.
I'm guessing we're going to start with the same initial state as our sample.
Yeah.
There's no different initial state provided.
Yeah.
Which is
All
not
right.
bad.
So,
You can
yeah, so-
verify your algorithm up to 18 days.
yeah, this is interesting.
And if the computer's so like snappy, can't we just ask the computer?
It should know, right?
Of course, knowing everything that we wanted.
All right. So it'd be interesting if we could see an example sample input for, or an example real input for this one. I wonder how many fish are there for our initial state on our real input.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing the real input because I'm not logged in. Or
Yeah.
all
Let
right.
me see. I'll see if I can check mine. See how many fish are there for the initial input. Wow, it's a big list.
A lot.
Wow. My input has, I think it looks like maybe 100 fish for day 1 or for day 0,
Wow.
sorry.
A lot of wants.
It's a lot of fish that are going to have a lot of babies. So I'm thinking day 80 is going to be a big number, probably in the hundreds of thousands, if not more. I'm guessing way more.
Just looking at the pattern of input at the 7-day cycle with a certain number of the 7-day cycle, it looks like the population about doubles every 7 days.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could be true, but that's just from this, the first 18 days.
Well, I think that generalizations like that could help you to guess if your final answer is within a good range.
Yeah.
Because if your final answer is like 17,000, that's probably not within the correct range at all.
Yeah. I think if we bore this out maybe to 50 days, it'd be a little easier to kind of make sure that the slope is straight.
Yeah.
Is
Well, I
there
think
a-
we can notice right away is here we started with 5 fish and we ended with almost 6,000 fish. So if in my input I'm starting with more than 100 fish, or even probably I'm not going to count it right now, but it looks like about 100, just a guess. I'm going to guess that my final answer is going to be probably more than 1 million.
Hmm.
It's going to be big. Well, it seems like a fun puzzle.
Yeah.
You're going to have to keep track of all the numbers that are getting down to 0.
The example make it much simpler though, because the text itself is kind of confusing at first,
Right.
but the example make it really clear, actually, to me at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the coding might be a little bit tricky for this one because you're going to have to keep track of every number in your list.
I think, probably a lot of these, he comes up with the algorithm numbers, and then it's like, oh, how can I put a story behind these
Yeah.
numbers? Because you're right, it's like the story he tells is just like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What did you smoke before?
Then you see the numbers change and how the numbers, interact with each other, then it becomes a little bit more like, oh, okay, now let's see what's actually happening here. All right, cool. Any questions for day 6?
Nope.
Cool.
Yeah, I seem to understand what we have to do. Actually doing it is going to be another thing.
How about just looping through and decrementing numbers? And if there's 0, just adding one more to the list.
I think it's going to be a lot of.
I think it's going to be.
I'm starting to worry that maybe this one's going to be one of the questions where time becomes a factor.
Yeah, space or time. I get the feeling that's going to be, I don't know. It seems to be, in my mind, maybe easier than you guys are thinking.
Yeah, my initial thought was it's not too hard.
But we'll see. I could be completely wrong. So without further ado, then let's talk about answers. So we've gone through day 1 before. Let's see what day 2 was like.
All right.
Because
Who wants to start?
What was the question? Oh, it was the death. Wasn't it?
I could start if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. If you could share.
All right. Should we review the question beforehand?
Yeah. Let's do a quick overview of the question and we'll get
Let
into it.
me navigate back. Question 2. Okay, I'll share my screen then. All right, can you guys see the question on my screen?
Mhm.
yeah.
All right, day 2 was dive. We had to figure out how to navigate our submarine. And it gave us a series of commands like forward 1, down 2, or up 3. And it was easy because we only had 3 different commands. We had forward and a number, down and a number, or up and a number. But one thing that we needed to keep in mind is that down and up, we're talking about our depth. So when it says down, that means we're increasing our depth. Our depth is getting bigger. When we go up, that means our depth is getting smaller. We're getting closer to the surface of the ocean. We're getting less deep. All right, so since you're on a submarine, down and up affect your depth. And so they have the opposite result of what you might expect. Keep that in mind. The submarine seems to already have a planned course, your puzzle input. You should probably figure out where it's going. For example, forward 5, down 5, forward 8, up 3, down 8, forward 2. Your horizontal position and depth both start at 0. The steps above would then modify them as follows. Forward 5 adds 5 to your horizontal position, a total of 5. Down 5 adds 5 to your depth, resulting in a value of 5, and so on. So I think this question wasn't too hard to understand. It was quite simple to actually put into code too. If you can see here, I'll make this a little bigger for you. So this is all of my code for part 1 on the screen right now. It wasn't too much. First of all, just like every puzzle, I'm going to use Node and JavaScript to do my answers. So first I have to require FS. That's module that I need in order to read a file. Next, I'm going to read my file. I'm going to split my file. I could actually probably get rid of some things here, but I copied this code from last year and didn't care to change it because it worked. And next, in order to get my input into a readable format for me, I mapped through that and I split on every space. So now that I have my input in a usable format, I set my temporary variables here. X starts at 0 and Y, my depth, starts at 0 also.
Can you describe the structure of your data structure on input? What is input?
Sure. So input is, well, let me change it to use my sample input. That'll be a little bit easier to understand maybe. And let me just console log it for you so you can see.
It's just strings, no? Array of strings.
Looks like it's going to be an array of arrays.
Yeah. So let me
Arrays of
open
strings.
up the terminal here, clear that out. I'm gonna get into my day 2 folder. And let's see here. So I have an array of arrays. This is how I like to format it. I wanted to keep each element as its own array. So in each subarray, I have 2 elements, my direction and the distance. So for me, this was an easy way to work with. There are other options for how to process this data and work with it. I'm not saying if anything else is better or worse, I'm sure, but whatever is comfortable for you. For me, I like this way. That way it made it very easy for me to add some conditionals. So now I'm going to loop through my input with a for each loop, and I'm just going to check the first element in each subarray. If it's forward, I'm going to add that value to my X value, my horizontal value. If it's down, I'm going to add to my depth. And if it's not forward or down, that means it must be up. So I'm going to subtract from my depth. Very simple conditional right here. Only a few lines of code, as you can see. And my final answer, if you care, came out to 150 for the sample. Let's make sure that that was correct. So yeah, it tells us here the sample gave us 150 as a correct answer. If I did that for my real input, the only thing I have to change right here is change this, the file that I'm importing to my input. I have sample and input, and then I would get my real answer. Any questions here? It's very short code. Probably even short.
Cool. Anybody else want to show the code?
No, I think it's pretty clear what you made. So
Alexi, I think your code was almost the exact same, right?
pretty similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get an array of an array. I think I just get one array and then.
Can we see? Can we share your
Yeah,
screen?
Yeah, show yours.
So same as so you can see, right?
Zoom in just to 1 or 2.
No.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, so same as code. I'm just using required and reading the file puzzle, letting it just split. So then if we just console log the puzzle, right.
-1, part -1.
Oh, typo. Oh, that's puzzle. Let me just put sample one. Yeah, that's just an array string. Okay, so pretty much the same as code. except I just created this variable to make it a little bit cleaner. And then after that, just check if it's forward, up or down, and exactly the same. Increase or decrease the value, and then multiply by the end. So it's very, very similar.
Okay.
All right.
You know, you're going over every element, right?
Yep.
So first you go for forward and then get the 5, and then you get the 5, and it does, and the down, but the 5 doesn't come up with anything because it's considered the element. And then you get the down and then the 5, and then it down's an element, so it execute. And then you get the 5 and the forward. So
Could skip one every time.
yeah, but you can't skip them for each.
Yeah, you can do. That's what we discussed with Scott last time. You cannot increment like manually
Yeah,
for each. That's true.
cool. But you got it.
I got it.
Yeah, works.
Okay. Stop sharing.
Cool. Python?
Okay.
Let's see it.
Sharing my screen. Can you guys see?
Yep.
So yeah, it's also the logic is exactly the same, I guess. So I have the import modules here, and I'm calling this get sample to call my sample data. After I get the sample data, I have horizontal and vertical positions variables, and I'm looping through my sample data. In mine, I have the data as an array or list of strings.
Yeah, looks like it's gonna be just like Alexi's.
Yeah. So I have a list of strings.
Just like
I'm
Alexa.
looping, but I have a manual here, so I'm incrementing by 2 every time. So, and after that, if it equals to false, increments the horizontal position. If it's up, decrements the vertical. If it's down, increments the vertical position, and return their
Multiplication.
returns them by multiplying.
All right.
Yeah.
I think if we look back at Alexi's, I think that shows one of the kind of drawbacks of a for each loop compared to a for loop. I think a for loop would have given you more customize, like you could customize it a little bit better so that you could step by 2 every time. I think that's a little bit more efficient. Looks good.
Yeah, that's it. I think even if the syntax is different, it's the same logic. I mean, JavaScript and Python, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
I like Python. It's very easy to read.
Right, like English. Seems like you're reading English.
Yeah, it looks clean.
The elif throws me off every now and then, but fortunately the editor tends to like shorten it for me. But I like to write else if all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions?
Good job.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, I will stop sharing then.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna see some Rust.
Yeah, I'll share mine.
Okay.
Let's see.
Luckily, you can probably skip the file importing discussion this time and go straight to the code.
I put that off in a library, so
Oh, okay.
a
Efficient.
library called UserLib. This is the first time looking at it. I'll open it up. UserLib. I've taken that thing that I had before and I put it out into a function called result lines from file that just reads a file. So that's the same code that I had before. But then I created another helper that uses that one, but the only difference is that it returns a vector. Actually, the only thing it does is it unwraps it. But for me, it was enough. It was enough. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that I get to like save like 8 characters. And then we'll get into the next one in another puzzle. But I also have another one called that changes all my input from strings into inputs of vectors. And then there's another one down here for a swap, which I ended up not using because Rust, I found out, comes with a really good swap function. But anyways, I have this user lib that I created so far for just reading files, but in the future, I'm going to be using it for commonly used functions. So that's what I ended up using for 2A. So I pulled that in. In my main function, I have like I normally do. I have the take that, but since it's probably not all that much more interesting for you guys, maybe that's big enough. But I have my sample inputs, the forward 5, down 5, forward 8, and so on. And then I have my actual file inputs. And the file inputs, I call that convenience function, vector lines from file. So it just reads a file and brings me back a vector of lines. Vector meaning list or array, depending on the language that you want. Except vectors, they all have to be the same. So that's a little bit different from your typical array or list. I can't mix data types. Man, this language of data types, oh my gosh. Anyways, I'll tell you stories later. But
I love the freedom of JavaScript.
yeah, so for the most part, I mean, yeah, I'm doing what you guys are doing. Mine, I use a reduce, but you know, I probably didn't necessarily have to, because all I did was get the result of the reduce and then I just print it out. So I was like, I could have just printed out the, you know, as I went instead of doing this. But anyways, so for each line of the inputs, I'm going to split by the space. So forward 5 means I split from forward and 5. So I do this for once per line instead of, I think what you guys did, you guys just read the line and then just chopped it up by the spaces.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit different, but you know, and then I take that second string and I have to convert it into a number. I have no language convenient conversions between integers and numbers. I have to explicitly convert it into a number. Not only a number, but I have to specify, is it an 8-bit number, a 32-bit number, a 64-bit number? Is it unsigned? Is it signed? It's like,
There's no such a thing like any.
there's no any. There's no any.
You didn't know the numbers, so you had to do a 32-bit number.
I think you can use a sum type as an option, but then you have to like make sure your entire code accommodates the fact that it could be anything, or a template even. But anyway, and then I just have a match, which is pretty much the same as your if else, or in other languages, switch case.
Okay.
So switch or a case statement on tokens. If it's forward, then I add the X component. So what I'm adding into the reducer is basically XY components. And then if it's forward, then I add to the X component, right? The first of these two on the vector. And then for down or up, I add to the second of that vector, or the Y component in a Cartesian pair, which is the same. And then I'm required to do a catch-all because it's a match. But anyways, that's a language specific thing. And then I'm required to, or I need to return the accumulator. So I have that little statement down there. But other than that, that's pretty much it. At the end of it, I take the result and I print it out as a number. And again, so verbose. I have to take this result.
Even for result.
Yeah, but the result, of course, is an XY pair. So I have to multiply them together and let them know I'm multiplying two 32-bit integers together to get my result. But yeah, I have to handhold it through all the types as I go through, which is a good thing. But man, the first time going through this is so tedious. I think it took me a good, at least 30 minutes just to figure out these types, even though these are mostly numbers.
Yeah.
Just because of all the numbers. So I spent this one time reading. But anyways, that's my code.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and explain part 2 then?
Oh, sure. Let's go to part 2. So part 2, based on your calculations, the planned course doesn't seem to make sense. Oh no. Don't say. You find the summary manual and discover that the process is slightly more complicated, actually. In addition to the horizontal position and depth, you also need to track a third value, aim, which starts at 0. The commands also mean something entirely different than you first thought. Down X increases your aim by X units, up X increases your aim, or decreases your aim by X units. So you can kind of think of the way, if the submarine had an axis, an axis and it just either pitched up or pitched down, right? Yeah. And so that's what up X or down X actually meant. It doesn't actually like bring the submarine up and down. It just points it up or down. And then
Changes your angle.
forward, well, depending on where it's pointing, forward will either, will go in that direction that it's pointing. And so it says forward X does two things. It increases your horizontal position by X units, or it increases your depth of your aim multiply by X. So not only does it move X, but it changes your depth multiplied by X. So again, note, since you're on a submarine, up and down do the opposite of what you might expect. Down means aiming in the positive direction. Now the above example says something different, and it goes through some of the example values. After following these instructions, you would have a horizontal position of 15 feet and a depth of 60. Multiplying these produces 900. Using this new interpretation of the commands, calculate the horizontal position and depth you would have after following the plan course. What do you get after you multiply your final horizontal position by your final depth? And so
I like your simple answer there. That is a big number.
it is a big number. Not quite out of the 32-bit numbers, but
Hard to read without commas.
yeah, I think it's like 1.7 billion or something like that. But anyways, let's get into the code of this. So the only thing that changes in this, or the thing that changes in this, is that you no longer can go directly to bringing your submarine up or down. You have to take the aim into account. Right. So let's go to 2B. 2B starts out exactly like 2A in terms of the code itself. Actually, the things that I added, I tried to, I think, comment on. So the only things that really change are in here for me. So I updated forward. So anytime you go forward, you have to take into account the aim as well as the X movement. So it's still X plus whatever your, the current number is, but I have to take in the aim into account. And the aim, well, I guess I've also changed this to add a third parameter. I added an aim parameter to it. And so now it's X, Y, and aim. And then so with the aim component, I take the second component, multiply it by, whatever number is coming in, the 3, the 8, or the 2. And then I add it to the Y component, just like the instructions that told me to do. And then, of course, these now change component 2, or component index 2, instead of Y, and increases or decreases the aim component. And that was it. That was the only changes I needed to make.
I like the way that you did it. Instead of creating different variables essentially to hold each value, you just created different indices in an array to hold those values.
Yeah, figured it's just X, Y's that we needed, and then we needed the aim, and then I realized, oh, I could just increase the number of stuff I'm tracking. And you're gonna find a lot of this in my code where I really abuse the accumulator. I'm pretty sure this is probably not the best way to do things, but it's kind of like, oh, I have this. Basically, what I do is I end up using these reducers as functions. I just feed it crap, and then it spits out crap, just like a function does. So I treat the reducer like a function, and I just make that accumulator bigger and bigger in terms of like a parameter list. It's probably really bad, but
it's clever. It's clever. That's something I wouldn't have thought of before.
Anyway, who wants to go take the next one?
I can go.
Okay.
I think so. It's exactly the same part for the top. Here I add an extra value than me. Aim started 0, and then the only difference is actually this one. I just check if the aim is different than 0, like in case it just goes negative, and then I just modify the depth. That's it. I just have to add this line of code. to get the aim.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Essentially, it's just like mine,
Yeah.
except that you added the plus equals, which I didn't realize until this weekend that Rust
Yeah.
also has plus equals. So I was like, oh,
Well,
should have used them more.
and this one was really quick. That's the one part.
Very simple. All right, should I share mine then, since I also did
Yeah,
JavaScript?
keep the JavaScripts together. It's easier.
Right.
I like it that way too. Let me share. Okay, looks like we're right here on my day 2, part 2. So yeah, everything from line 11 and above is the exact same. I kept my same data format. I just added an extra variable for my aim that's initialized as 0. And then in my for each statement here with my conditionals, I just had to modify each of my conditions. So now I changed the order a little bit too. Before I had my forward as my first condition because that used to be the easiest one for me to conceptualize. But now forward is the hardest one, so I moved it down to the bottom. And I started with the easiest one to do is up. And for me, up, you're just subtracting from your aim. Down, you're adding to your aim. And then else, so this is going to be for the forward conditions. That one took 2 lines of code instead of 1. Now I'm going to add to my horizontal position. And I'm also going to add my vertical or to my vertical position multiplied by the aim. Not very difficult.
Cool.
Pretty much the exact same as Alexa.
Right.
It's just we use the, like before we used the different formatting for our data, where I used subarrays and he just looped through a single array.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's the exact same.
Alexi, for yours, where did you do the parsent? Did you do it before the tree, the if else tree?
The first thing is just after the for each. So the first line of the for each.
Yeah, just before the if else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to share it real quick one more time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that because then you don't have to pepper the part.
Yeah, you only have it one time. That's nice.
I also realized like I tend to only declare the let once and just like declare. So from
Come on, like,
yeah.
even though they're used way over there.
But I like it like this way. Only one let and just comma, comma, comma.
But if it's only, yeah, technically, if it's only used within that scope of that function, it really
Yeah.
should be kept clean within that scope, the lexical scope. But, whatever, it's a small program.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally understand. In fact, I think a lot of C programmers would
Yeah. C# I remember I used to do it a lot.
They're all up in the front. Declare everything, and then you get into your business.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's
All
see.
right. Yeah, I will share now. So can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
If we can.
I think it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
I have a new variable now.
Line 39 you see.
Yeah, so it's basically the same copy, but I have introduced a new aim as you have to track the aim of the submarine 2. So I'm looping through my input. If it equals to forward,
38.
I'm incrementing my horizontal position. And if aim is not equal to 0, as we have to, 0 makes the depth 0. If it doesn't equal to 0, then I'm adding the increment, incrementing the depths in here.
I have a question for
Up
you.
and down.
I have a question for both you and Alexi, though.
Yeah.
Is that condition actually needed? Because if the aim is 0, then the next line, your line 39, will just add 0.
Add 0.
Which is okay, because that's what it should add, right? If the aim is 0, then it's gonna multiply your the number that it gives you times 0, and so that's going to be 0. So it's just going to be your current value plus 0. which
Let's
really,
check.
there's no problem. So
think-
I think that conditional is not necessary.
It was the, yeah, let's see. It was part 2, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the sample input had to be 900. The result should be 900. So
I think why both of us we did it is because in the text they actually mention
Mhm.
like
right.
check if it's different than 0. So that's why I think automatically I just implemented it
Sure.
like just by
So I
safety.
remove it. Yeah,
No, you have to
it's
keep
not working.
the second part. You have to keep the depth part, but just
Yeah,
get
you have to keep the depth.
Right.
for the most part, it's a good habit just to kind of get into that
I
because
think it is working.
there is that possibility that something weird might happen.
Mm.
You know, that's why they put it in the text.
But then also I was thinking I should check, okay, different than 0, but what if it was in the negative or
Hmm.
I should have checked. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's possible.
Well, I assume that if it, for example, was up -2, then it would be okay to use that -2 because then it would essentially be the same as if it was down 2.
Yeah.
Because you're just changing the angle that the submarine's tilted up or down.
Yeah.
So I think negative numbers could be okay. And a 0, for me, a 0 aim was just straight ahead.
Yeah. But what if the Y was negative? You were like flying above the water.
Right.
Hey. We're in Santa Claus's submarine. We can do anything.
Yeah, so if aim doesn't equal 0, incrementing depths. If it equals up, decrementing aim by that value. If it equals to down, incrementing aim by that value, and returning their multiplication.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah. I would just say, like, one of the things I do when I see a lot of like this sub, the arrays, just to make it easier for me to read, because sometimes I get like mixed up, is I actually put variable names to them. Like input x+1, there's a lot of them.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
You mean just
Yeah, so for like the first line after the 4, maybe assign that to a variable and then just as a variable name.
Yeah.
yeah.
Whoa. It just did that for you?
Yeah. It's starting doing some comment things for me too.
That Copilot's scary, man.
You don't even need the int anymore. There you go.
Yeah.
It looks a little cleaner. I like that.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Cool.
Too.
Looks good.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah. Finishing both parts of day 2. So far, clear sailing.
I think from the day 3 we might get different code.
Yeah.
Starting to get longer.
Could be. Yeah. We're kind of like, working out the process of, solving the puzzles. And then now we're day 3, we're actually gonna get a puzzle.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Any other?
We'll start having problems explaining what we did and why we did it.
Actually,
It
one of the
worked.
things I realized-
It worked.
I realized while doing 2015, because I'm in the day 20, I think now, of 2015.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I had done in the past, or I tried to do at least, well, one thing I tried to do is I try to comment as much as possible, knowing that I'm not the only one, because I want other people to read the code. But also because I want other people to know like all the times I failed. Like I'll leave my old, like the carcasses of my old algorithm in there because I want people to know that I tried this and it doesn't work.
Or at least I couldn't make it work.
Or I couldn't make it work, right? Like this is, or like, don't do this.
Don't go there. Don't go.
Don't go here. Don't go here.
Get
This
in.
goes
Stop.
nowhere. But I think, so I encourage you guys also, I think, because it'll just be interesting for us and probably whoever's going to be like watching this and all. But I think it's important to see the failures as well, just to see like what we tried and didn't work and how painful it was to let go of it because I'm swearing, like even day 19, 2015, I replaced my entire code base. Like all of it, like the entire thing. I was just like, all right, gonna comment the whole thing out because space-time, it doesn't work.
Start over.
And start from scratch and try to find a pattern. And then I realized, so that particular question, part A and part B were completely different. I didn't reuse anything to get the answers. And then afterwards, I went online to see how other people done it because I was like, this is kind of, it seemed a little out of the norm, but it seems like a lot of people also realized that part A was brute force and part B, no, you couldn't brute force. They had to start from. But I like to see that carcass. I like to see the vestige of my old journey, the old failed journey. But anyways, so if you guys end up in that situation, try to keep what you are okay with keeping just for the sake of, the education, if not entertainment of others.
Yeah.
This is not production code. That's all.
All right.
Cool. Then I'll see you guys again on Wednesday, where we'll cover day 7 and 8 and day 3 answers.
Okay, it should be more fun.
Hope so. See you guys
Bye.
then.
See you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Yeah.